Great. So I am delighted to be joined by Gaetano Cavalieri, President of Cibjo, the World Jewellery Confederation, and by Iris van der Veken, who heads the Watches and Jewellery Initiative 2030. And we will be exploring what the two groups are doing to promote the future of sustainability and to drive forward attainment of the United Nations SDGs. But firstly, if I may start with Gaetano as our host. Gaetano, why does sustainability matter? Why is it important?
Well, I follow the consideration that was done in the previous panel about the term sustainable and sustainability. For my experience, considering that I am involved in the sustainability issues, meaning and applications, go back to 25 years ago. And I have learned about sustainability at the UN building in New York since then. Cibjo is a member with special consultative status within the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations, as well signatory of the Global Compact. And what we do since then is increasing our knowledge of the practical application of the principles related to sustainability. Which are the principles related to sustainability? Are the Millennium Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, so the agenda first 2015 and afterward 2030, Iris is an expert on that, and the principles related, meaning Global Compact, meaning OECD, meaning government legislations, in order that every single company, action and transaction. Excuse me, may I ask you, I'm sorry, gentlemen, hello, do you mind if you need to talk? Maybe you can do that outside. I mean, unless you want to come on the stage and then you continue your conversation, we will enjoy also what you're saying. I'm sorry. Well, this happened, you know, that I was just thinking and was following more your conversation than mine. The issues are related to the practical application on the field of sustainability. I give you a little example. 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Eradicate poverty. Wonderful thing. How do you do? I tell you what we do, and what we did, and what we continue doing. Program in Africa in order to push our members, which we did, to create possible activities related to the women condition with the mines, worker condition in the mines, health conditions, women, gender equality, which is the goal number 5, but also in there because the children has to be taken care during the moment that the parents are working, in that case, in the mines or in that area. Just to give you a little example. And I can go forward, goal by goal by goal, ending with partnership. Because partnership is a very important element in terms of sustainability. I don't want to be long going. I leave to Iris that she is really a super expert. But partnership is essential in order to create condition through partnership. For instance, today, this is a partnership. Cibjo and Watch and Jewellery Initiative 2030 is a partnership. Cibjo and Lisa, myself and Lisa, this is a partnership because Initiative Art and Culture, what we are doing. So it's a journey that is important through which companies, through our tools, which are there, freely downloadable, they can read and use. I mean, the gentleman that is there, Ken Scarrett, who is the dean of the Cibjo Academy that, which, as I said, will be launched right now in Jaipur, has prepared an incredible job in order to let the people understand. The gentleman seated there, Mr. Dr. Daniel Niffeler, as part of our laboratory-grown committee and as contributing immensely. Gubelin is very well known all around the world. I can mention all the others. This is what we do every single day. Every single day, 24 hours a day, because the 24 time zones, and we do for the benefit of the industry, in order to let the industry collectively grow and be sustainable.
Thank you very much, Gaetano. I know you are highly motivated also to drive forward attainment of the SDGs. Could you tell me a little bit about why this is important to you, why these SDGs matter, and just elaborate a little bit about what the WJI 2030 does so that people understand?
Yeah, so first of all, I think it's important. There's a lot of discussion on what sustainability means, and also the concept of sustainability. And I always find it interesting. I was born in 1970, and then you had Milton Friedman who would say, well, the purpose of an organization to exist is profits. And if you look at this 50 years, and I'm almost 53 years on this beautiful planet, today it is all about purpose. So actually we see this amazing trend, which is a very good trend. I would say that companies have to see how they're doing their business, and they have to do it in a multi-stakeholder approach. And over time, just like Dr. Gaetano said, the concept of sustainability evolved. And 2015 was actually a very critical moment for every industry in the world, because actually, for the first time in history, 193 countries agreed on an agenda on sustainability. So finally, we had the alphabet. What is the pathway ahead? But the reality is, David, is that it's called 2030 Agenda. It's about leaving no one behind. They're very critical SDGs, and we think about gender, but we think about decent labor for our industry, responsible production and consumption, etc. All these topics matter. And every industry has a responsibility to tackle them. But I think our industry, because we work in jewelry, we don't develop machines. Sorry to say, we do need them, and we do need artificial intelligence, and we need technology. But I'm saying we are in the business of selling emotions. So it means this integrity should be at the heart of what we do. And there I believe the industry has to realize that the times are gone that we cannot be transparent. People want to know how their products are made, how they have touched lives, how they've gone through the value chain, and actually how were those circumstances. And more than that, how has climate been impacted, and how has biodiversity been impacted? And that requires a lot of data and information. And so coming back to the question, so why was the Watch and Jewellery Initiative 2030 founded? And we're very, very proud of our collaboration with Cibjo, and also Dr. Gaetano is part of our board, is that it was actually a really interesting new collaboration of partnerships, because you have two competitors. You've got the Kering Group and you've got Cartier. And two CEOs come together and say, you know what? The time is now. 2030 is just around the corner. We are brands. We have a duty to care, a double responsibility to push the agenda on sustainability. Let's develop this coalition. And today, I'm very proud to say, we have over 50 members with many brands that you, of course, know, like Chanel and Gucci, smaller brands, suppliers, because we believe it's important to work in an ecosystem. And what do we ask companies to commit? It's not a free ride, and I think it's super important. It's a C-suite-driven initiative where we ask companies, one, you commit to science-based targets. In other words, you really need to understand your supply chain and the impact on climate. It's about science, it's about data, and it's about measuring progress. Second, we ask you to look at how do you analyze your biodiversity impact of your materials and your value chain? Where are you sourcing from? How is that going through your production in certain countries? Do you know what impact you're having in the regions where you are developing your business? And within the third pillar, we have a very big focus on going deeper. Yes, we have good standard bodies, we have organizations who are doing a lot well, but we need to go deeper into the supply chain where the real risks lie. Where is the subcontracting happen? Where do colored gemstones, 90% artisanal? How is this being managed? Do we know actually, do we know certain information on operationalization of human rights? And then we have the topic of gender. We have the topic of artisanal scale mining. And I think it is really important now that, and it concerns me, that the industry needs to acknowledge we can't do things anymore like we used to do, and we need to push harder, and we need to go much more in depth of the materials. And I think that's why we are here. We are now 1 year up and running. We've been working very closely with Science Based Targets Initiative to help our companies on journeys. So we have companies, of course, in different maturity stages, and I embrace the smaller enterprises that have joined because they're on a learning journey, and I'm on a learning journey. I'm learning every day about biodiversity. I'm learning every day much and more about climate, what is possible. I'm understanding much more about measurements, and I think that's what we want to do. We want to push based on data. We want to really create a nature roadmap with the industry. And finally, we are, for example, now launching the Human Rights Navigator, where we're pushing deeper on operationalization of human rights due diligence. And I can go on, but I ask you to invite and read our stakeholder report and our regular updates on our website or in our newsletter. So we do believe we are here to push and lead the way forward.
Okay. Thank you very much, Iris. So Gaetano, can you tell us a little bit about what Cibjo has been doing in practical terms, what activities you've been involved with, what events you've been attending so far this year to help push forward sustainability and achievement of the SDGs? What events have you been involved with?
Let me start from our last activity, which was last July, my report to the UN General Assembly of the status of health of the jewelry industry again, in the very large English description of the word, meaning from mine to retail, so the entire pipeline. The Secretary General was there, all the ambassadors of 100 or nearly 200 countries were there, and I had the opportunity to speak, as happens every year, and as will happen, when together we are going to the UN.
Because Cibjo is the only UN-affiliated jewellery industry body in the world, is that correct? Or are there others?
More than affiliated, is a member of the Economic and Social Council, and is the only one in the jewelry industry. There is no other organization, because we did what we did at the time, and was a very hard job, and still maintaining the condition, and to be recognized, we have to present a report every year, for a kind of report, every 2 years another kind of report, every 4 years we are under scrutiny to be, let's say, considered, if we have done things, to be reconfirmed in the position. So it's not for granting, it's not a membership that you have your card. No, it's not like this. It's something that you have to work every day in order to have a program. What we have done, number one, we have issued a sustainable and resources, a sustainable resources book, which is in the website with the UN and OECD, for instance. We have created, since the last 3.5 years, conditions in order to establish an association in Africa, in particular with women, in order to give them the tools to develop what are the resources in their countries to be used in their countries, and develop an industry where the industry, up to now, in terms of processing, under leadership of women, that we together with Iris, we know a good number of them, are there. They would be in Jaipur. So it's not nothing.
At the Congress, at the Cibjo Congress.
We talk about, because the majority of the thing we do, we simply don't talk unless are there ready to be presented. Because make announcement, as happened frequently, we have several experience. We announce that tomorrow we do this. Okay, do it. But it's better that, in fact, instead to make announcement, you present facts. Because the facts count. The announcements, a nice thing, but are, you know, just a sport. So we continue doing it. And in Jaipur this year, we will have an exceptional Congress for several reasons. Number one, the minister, now we have friends from India. The minister Goyal, that I'm sure you know, is the Minister of Commerce and Industry in India. We have met several times. Last time was in Rome during his visits. You know, we had a conversation, myself and himself, only with few other people of his staff and delegation, related to how it is possible to boost the gems and jewelry industry in India, throughout the world. Because, again, we have a global role. We cannot say we stand for this or we stand for that. We stand for the entire industry. Because, as we said today, the industry isn't interconnected. Design, as Paola said, or technology, as David said, is for all. It's not because I am a man, I am a woman, I am black, green, white, red, whatever, or I am in this time zone or in that other time zone. Everybody can use. Because today, you have the computer, you have internet connection, you can use the computer wherever you are. Now, in doing it, in India we will present at the Congress, which is the moment where the activity initiated in the previous Congress, which was done virtually, we have had the COVID and all the stuff and so on. Now this is the first Congress where the people will meet physically. And you yourself will be there because you have to do a lot of stuff. Lisa will be there. A number of people that are present in this room will be there. And you will see yourself what Cibjo is going to do. Iris is also, let's say, handling, managing, supervising specific area in the Congress because our cooperation, our partnership. Lisa will be there the same because partnership, going back to the 17 goals, is essential in order to maintain everything we do. And what, again, I underline, what we do, go in the website, download whatever, no money.
Yeah. Thank you, Gaetano. So Iris, the Watches and Jewellery Initiative 2030 is a relatively new organization. Can you also tell us what you have been doing proactively this year to further these goals of achieving the SDGs, which I know you're also very passionate about? And also elaborate a little bit more about what the WJR 2030 is what the organization stands for.
So if you look at first of all, I think it's important to see how the system works. I think today what is the success of the initiative? One is it's indeed the CEOs who lead the way, but it's their teams that are working closely with us in a very multi-stakeholder ecosystem. So we do workshops, we have meetings together on those topics. People have commitments, and we work with experts to help them, because we also acknowledge that it's very difficult for some companies to start their journey. It's especially on climate and biodiversity. So we work with the Boston Consulting Group and BSR. We're actually bringing the members on a pathway, and we're measuring that. So I think it's very important from the moment a member comes in, after an in-depth due diligence process, we kind of bring them on a metrics to understand where they are in the 3 pillars, so that year by year that we can look at the progress. We're working on the Nature Climate Roadmap, so I would say that's more the background work. Where we absolutely have advanced is in, I would say, in 2 domains. One is everything on gender. So we have a collaboration with UN Women. And UN Women, actually, a few months, we had a meeting with them, and they have developed a gender-responsive procurement tool. And that tool had not been tested, so we're actually the first organization in the jewelry industry testing that tool. So we asked some of the brands who wants to test gender-responsive procurement in the supply chain, because when we think about gender, often we start thinking only about, woman leadership, empowerment, etc., into our own operations. But here we're really talking about how are you tackling the issue of gender in your supply chain? Are you buying from women entrepreneurs? How are the companies that you're buying from, how are they integrating that topic into their strategy? And we were very lucky. We had Gucci, we had Swarovski, we had different brands. 9 of them joined hands in a coalition, worked together for 10 months, and the results will come out next week in New York at the General Assembly in a practical case study. Now, we've seen the gaps, and I think that's very important for this audience and the people online, is that we learned so much about how challenging it is to find data on gender-responsive procurement, but also on the obstacles. And then the question is, we know where the gaps are, how are we going to tackle them? So that will be the next step. We're working with Dr. Anino Imua, who founded 100 Women of Davos, on diversity and inclusion. Everyone is looking at that topic, exploring it, often also because of the legal compliance and the concerns on not being inclusive enough in the widest sense of an organization. And there we're actually building a framework for companies to implement, especially also smaller enterprises. And that requires a very, very global and local approach. So we're actually working with local people from different countries and now setting up kind of that pathway. And then on biodiversity, like I said, we are working with experts on understanding some of the impacts of our materials and also helping companies do their first risk assessments. One project that has absolutely advanced is everything on ESG reporting. So from when I came in, from the first month actually, we had a collaboration with ESG Book, which is one of the largest organizations in the world, experts on ESG. And what we've done is we've looked at all the material topics of the industry that are relevant when you look at risk. And that can depend from mining to retail. And then we've looked at all the investment rating agencies' indicators. So we've looked at the SASB, we've looked at also GRI, we've looked at Global Compact rating, and then looked at, okay, if you are saying that you're a responsible company, what are the indicators that you should report on? And how are you going to be able to prove that? And second, if we want to attract, and I loved, Paola, yesterday, what you said in your trend session about when you want to really get a sustainable supply chain or responsible value chain, you need to get the SMEs on board. And you cannot make it overly complicated, and that's where we have a duty to bring them in. So we've looked also at indicators how smaller enterprises could start. And we are, I think, in almost the final phase of development, and that will be launched. And maybe one more topic I want to touch, and it's very close also to the mission of Cibjo, is education. We have a partnership with United Nations Global Compact. We set Goal 17, we're not going to reinvent the wheel. They have the most amazing library of education on key topics, decent labor, human rights, biodiversity, gender, etc. And actually we're getting a curated space, working with them, taking all that knowledge, opening it up to the industry, but then building on it with practical cases from our industry. So this is, and like I said, it's hard work. I have a very small, agile team. I work with wonderful partners. Some of them are here in the room, like Hill and Co. And I'm very confident, David, that we're moving into the right direction.
Okay, so Gaetano, are we on target to achieve the SDGs by 2030? Some are open-ended, but most of them have this deadline. Are we on target, or are we falling behind target?
I would say that the work is in progress because, you know, being on target is something that from one side is important, but in my opinion is more important do things. And this is what we are doing. So if we as a community are able, as most probably we are, to make collaboration, partnership, and bring the industry in the way that we are trying hard, very hard to help, and by the way, we are succeeding, then we will be on target. Because, please.
Yes, so I want to just build on that with Iris then. I mean, where are we making more progress and where are we making less progress in terms of attaining the SDG goals? And do you want to speak a little bit more about your passion for SDG 5, gender equality, and the progress so far in that regard?
Okay, so on one point, I want to take two steps. I think one step is, has our industry progressed? Yes. Does it have to take accelerated steps? Yes, and it should, because we work in the industry of beauty and emotions. If we look at the fact of the SDG report that just came out in May 2023, and I just want to take a few elements out of it, because, David, I think it's important all of us acknowledge it. First of all, hunger has increased and is back at 2005 levels for the global. Gender equality is 300 years behind, and I invite you to look at some of the facts, which are terrifying. If you look at, by May 2023, and of course the impact of the Ukraine war has had a devastating impact on refugees, but conflict and human rights violations had displaced 110 million people, of which 35 million refugees. This is the highest figure ever recorded. And then I'm sure some of you have read the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that the global temperature is already 1.1 degree above the pre-industrial level, and it is likely to reach or surpass the critical 1.5 degree tipping point by 2035. And then finally, it really worries me because my godchild loves dinosaurs. And it always says, you know, the world is currently facing the largest species extinction, even since the dinosaur age, and oceans were burned with over 17 million metric tons of plastic pollution in 2021, with projections showing a potential doubling by 2040. So I don't think we're in a good place. And I think that's where we as an industry need to step up. And when we talk about gender, and I'm really happy that Gaetano is always supporting us so much on that, is that when we talk about gender, we need to talk about economic empowerment. When a woman has the potential to have an income, and we know that from facts, she will take care of herself and the family. And that brings development, and there are numerous cases of that. So I think there is such a huge responsibility to, of course, do it in areas in the world that are so vulnerable, but also we need to look at it also in empowerment, I think wider than that, you know, empowerment at manufacturing sites in India, Thailand, Sri Lanka. You know, it cannot only be women polishing, which is fantastic. Can women be leaders? Can they be leading teams? Empowerment at boards, empowerment at CEOs of jewelry brands. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done, and we can only do that if we change the mindset, and if each one of us every day sees, how can I empower, and also how can I become more inclusive? Because we're all biased. And it's a conscious process that we need to get into.
Okay, thank you. So just to wrap up, I'd like to ask each of you, starting with Gaetano, what is next? I mean, what are your key priorities going forward? What sort of steps are ahead? And then I think we take one or two questions and we'll wrap it there as we're on time now.
Well, the immediate next is the Congress.
This is the Cibjo Congress taking place in Jaipur
Yes.
in the first week of October.
Exactly, which will gather hundreds of people from all over the world and India itself, where we will discuss and will take decision even in all these issues that we have talked today. So we will talk about the entire issues that we have had in the 3 panels, and it will be fantastic because the people that is attending are the top scientists in the world, the top dealers in the world. And what is our interest? Our interest is a social interest. Cibjo is a poor organization by choice. We do not have budget of millions and millions and millions. We do not have any budget, nearly any budget at all. But on the other side, the people that voluntarily, with passion, with knowledge, with a long generations, is giving the contribution because this industry is a wonderful industry, or you are in love, or you are not part of this industry. And when you do this kind of elements, this kind of contribution, then the industry may grow because the passion of everybody. And we are a big team, and overall, we are a community. So the next step will be the Congress, and from the Congress on, we will have another journey, another journey, another journey for the benefit of the entire industry, including the consumer and mainly the consumer.
Yeah. Before I ask Iris the last question, please do have any questions ready. We can take 1 or 2 before we wrap up today. So Iris, what's next for you and for the WJI 2030?
Well, we'll be in New York in a week at the General Assembly. We'll be hosting our roundtable in collaboration with the United Nations Global Compact on Women to show our first results of working 10 months on the ground. Also having a more multi-stakeholder discussion, also where Cibjo will be present on the future for the industry with the SDGs. But more important, okay, that's a momentum. You know, you come together. I think more important is that with our members, we are really working hard on the transparency and reporting framework. For us, the disclosure is key. And I welcome, you know, any thoughts and also innovations to help us on that, because we believe if we are able to tell credibly what we know and also where we fail in, that will give a lot of trust to the integrity of the value chain, because at the end of the day, we have responsibility towards our consumer.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, Elle, and please do identify yourself again. Thank you.
Sure. I'm Elle Hill. I'm the founder and CEO of Hill & Company. We're fine jewelry, diamond and gemstone launch and growth experts. This question is for you, Iris. How do we encourage segments of the supply chain that feel hesitant to be transparent because of centuries of a culture that said protect your sources and protect how you do it? How do we encourage them and educate them and show them the value that it's going to bring to them ultimately, so they can participate and be one of the links in this chain that's essential?
So I think there are unfortunately, I think, positive and negative drivers. I forgot to mention something about the evolving regulatory landscape, you know, with Europe and the Green Deal and the Corporate Social Responsibility Directive. So where often, even though smaller suppliers will not directly have the duty to report, they will have to give information because they will report to a big player that has to report. So, so regulations are advancing to transparency reporting. I think the most important first element is that we're all a connected supply chain. So a brand will work with suppliers and suppliers will work with subcontractors. I think there needs to be, we need to see it as one value chain. We need to look at one network that's interconnected, and we need to educate, and also give room to fail, but improve, because it's not a perfect world. When I see somebody, actually, I don't even believe, and maybe I cannot predict the future. Maybe when I'm 60, in 10 years, in 7 years, I will be somewhere sitting, you know, on a boat. I don't know. Maybe I relaxing.
I got there when I'm not on the boat.
But I'm just saying that I don't think that sustainability reporting will be the same as today. Today, a sustainability report is about the past 12 months. It's already old news. In the times we are now, in my view, there will be complete different mechanism on data, actually the data that exists now of your value chain. So my point is, we need to educate them, and we also need to give them the opportunity to improve. And I think, and that needs public-private collaborations. I think also governments still have a lot of duty to do so, because often there's such weak links in the legislation that sometimes they take advantage of that. I think standards play a key role, but then again, I also believe that if you want to implement standards, you need to be able to show measurable impact and on an annual basis. I think the times, you know, that you can have certifications over longer time are not relevant, because see what happens in 1 or 2 years. And it's just a trend, it's not a criticism. So it means is, I would say, education, working much smaller together, sharing also. I think everything that we're doing is going to be open source. Also, the academy we're working on the trainings, we want to give that to SMEs. We want to test it also if it's meaningful. Maybe it's too high in the sky. Maybe we need to go more lower and give them much more help desk support. But I think education is super critical to bring them in. I also believe some will go out, because unfortunately our industry still has players that are not doing the right thing. And I think then, you know, you need to take consistent decisions. If they don't want to improve, we should not work with them, because we hurt the consumer, and when the consumer market is hit, it hits all of us.
Before the gentleman will ask, his question.
This will be the last question. Thank you very much. Please do identify yourself.
1 second. Before the gentleman is asking his question, I would like to underline one thing. Cibjo has started many years ago a journey on carbon neutral footprint. We didn't touch this. And Cibjo has been, up to now, and will continue to be, the only organization in this industry to be certified as carbon neutral footprint organization through experts that they audit as an audit organization, us, in order that they control what we do every single day, meaning we go by car, what kind of car, we go by train, we go by tram, we go by whatever we do. And this is something that through our example, we have pushed many of our members to be certified themselves. Sorry, please.
So please do let us know who you are, and this will be the last question of this session. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brijesh Dolokia from Hare Krishna Exports. I'm sure that you were talking about educating, and since our family were doing a lot of social activities, we could put down 17 goals, and also we are part of WGI. But I have a question: how can middle stream can, without joining or by joining WGI, how can they do themselves or take a pathway towards United Nations 17 goals?
I think that, first of all, our industry should work more together. If you look at, we have so many organizations and they do all meaningful work, so it's not, you know, I'm not criticizing one or the other, but I think, first of all, I think it would be very meaningful to have a more united view as an industry on some of these topics. And second is, if you want to get the heart of the industry inside, it's very important that they have access to, I would say, more simplified tools without taking away, of course, the credibility. You can't, I always say, you can't want to do philanthropy on one hand and give a check to a community initiative, and on the other hand, you have certain human rights abuses where you're sourcing your stones from. So I think, again, I would say open source education and also mentorship of certain companies, that you bring together some SMEs communities or organizations in certain regions in the world. You give them education, you give them opportunity through webinars, some help desk support, you give them homework to do for their own organization, simple template, just the first basics of sustainability. They come back, they get feedback. Because that's actually what we are doing at a higher level on the science-based targets on biodiversity, because Yes, I get training. Do I understand everything? Okay, I digest it. I have questions. I can ask an expert. I do my homework. But we just need to do it accessible. And I think you need to reward it in the sense that if those companies are doing well, that they get some, I'm not saying an incentive, but just, being mentioned, being referenced, maybe being able then to work for certain brands who have more challenging criteria, rightly so, to protect the integrity of their supply chain. But I think that associations together could work to have more consistency on those topics. Yeah.
One last comment from the gentleman over there. Very brief, please. And please do identify yourself. Very brief. Thank you.
I'm Clemens Link from Provenance Proof, also in Transparency Initiative and company. Very much in alignment with what you have said. Just a very small comment. Actually, incentivization is a very important, to my experience, very key point in particular for the mid-stakeholders to be convinced to join. That means cutters, gem dealers, and so on. And I think it is legitimate to even say that a key incentive is an economic incentive, meaning that transparency, working in transparency, passing on transparency, is adding value also to the good throughout the entire supply chain. Why shouldn't these people be legitimate to earn through that and to, let's say, have a premium out of what they get? And this premium will go through the supply chain. This is something we have even observed now, and anybody benefits through it directly. It's an incentive you always have to mention, in my opinion.
I am also aligned with that, and I think if you really look at the regulations, so you have now the Corporate Social Responsibility Directive, but if you look at what Mr. Reinders is doing from DG Justice on the new updated due diligence on human rights, etc., which we're working closely with and which we're developing a pilot on, it is best now that we get everyone on board, because in that new legislation, it doesn't talk about supply chain only, it talks about the value chain. So it means all the interconnected webs of your chain. So it means is you need to get those SMEs inside. You need to get the smallest players inside.
Well, thank you very much. That concludes our session for this morning. And I would, Gaetano, do you wish to make any wrap-up comments or remarks? Fine. Thanks so much.